We're going to talk about this whole changing of times. What Gavin was saying, other Gavin, small Gavin, was saying in the last night about a disruptive time in the industry. And there's a lot of talk of apps and technology and these, you know, the future of the agent and what that is. So we then talk about the idea of the difference between invention and innovation and how does it affect us, how can we use it, and then our role moving forward, how we can future-proof ourselves to be the agents of the future. Where is the place for us in the future? So most of us in this room will have good fond memories of Kodak in the 70s and 80s and Fujifilm. And Kodak was one of the, I mean, we're talking like the sort of the Microsoft of the day. It was massive. It had huge city blocks in upstate New York. And they were resting on their laurels because they provided Hollywood with all of the film. They, in fact, invented the digital camera, but were so concerned about cannibalizing their own company that they just said, no, we've got to stick with film because all of our revenue is coming from the major studios, that let's just not release that. And of course, they now are no longer. Not only are they no longer, but if we think about a need at the time, what was our big issue with film and taking pictures at the time? I mean, it was expensive. You bought, excuse me, what was it, 24, or you could buy the 24 or the 32, and then you'd have to go and get it printed, and it would cost, and you'd wait a week. And so these guys came along, and then they thought, well, this is cool, you can have it in the moment, but it just became more expensive. And then this happened, and everything became digital. And essentially, the concept of digital is economically, it's quite a tough thing for us to get our head around because it essentially makes everything free. It's why one of the biggest issues that they have in digital industries is piracy. Because in your mind, when you're copying something, no one's losing. So the concept of having things in just data is a massive thing. Now, think about it. This wiped out the camera, largely wiped out the photographer, wiped out film, because now it just comes with your phone. Unless you are a dedicated photographer going out to find, the lesser-known red-bellied egret, you don't need a lens that is as long as your leg. Your phone's fine. So think of the music industry. Show of hands, how many people bought a CD in the last 6 months? Wow, why? Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. How many of you bought vinyl in the last 6 months? Quality's better. But it's more about the experience of vinyl. That's a different conversation, which Yael will get into a little later. But CDs, again, as soon as the MP3 market happened, how many people now, you're listening to music at low quality, but people have chosen the convenience over the quality because you're listening in tiny little headphones. And when you're 13, you don't care because you never heard, Paul Simon on vinyl, so you don't even know what quality is. And the point that I'm getting to is, do you remember at school, certainly for me at school, we used to have those things of Prit, and you'd sit there and rub your finger on the glue and make those little spider webs over the back of the Prit. That's the stuff we used to do. We didn't sit there playing Angry Birds in history. Okay, these guys, the kids of today, and I mean, there's a big difference we're going to get into now between the teens and the millennials, but it's very difficult to imagine, for us to imagine how they see the world. And we need to understand it, because not only are they going to be and need to be our staff, but they also are already and are going to be our future consumers and future partners in collaboration. So it's critical to understand their values, why there's certain buying behaviors and why they do what they do, and trends and things that they can see that we can already tell are going to have an impact later on. Now, this conversation alone, I mean, if you do research on marketing and understanding these markets, you'll go for days. So it's been quite tough for me to try and condense it all down and make it as relevant as I can, and just for us, for the stuff that we can try and get our head around in terms of just being related to your day-to-day world. So these guys, basically from, it's basically 80s, anyone from the age of, I think it's about 79 are millennials, 79 and up. So it's people in their 30s, basically. 20s and 30s, millennials. Very, their entire philosophy is give up your dreams. I mean, give up your job and go and follow your dreams. They are not necessarily interested in conservative investment. They very much, let's Instagram ourselves in Bali surfing, and we'll work under a palm tree. They community-driven, and they are, of course, attached and connected to social media. But they remember dial-up. They remember a time when you typed in, into Google, and there's a bit of a progress bar on a wheel, and you wait. Whereas the younger generation don't. Okay? Millennials are now. If we want to focus on the future, you can forget that ship sailed. This is the future here. The teens of today, and remember, they're going into the workforce next year. So if you start recruiting agents that are 19, this is now the future, which gives us a very indication of a mindset of where, and an idea of where we're going to be in 10 or 20 years. Now, just before I go into this, it's important to remember that what I'm talking about here is not necessarily age-specific. This is a mindset. So there are 50-year-olds that think like millennials, and there's some 15-year-olds that are going on 65. It's got a lot to do, obviously, with the nature-nurture thing and your upbringing and your parents. But generally speaking, this is a very interesting group of subculture, because it's very different to millennials in one way, one important way. They highly value financial security. They saw what the recession did to their lazy, narcissistic parents, and they don't want to live on a beach, and they actually want to be able to have nice homes and nice cars. In fact, buying a home, research has indicated that buying a home is a lifetime goal for a lot of these people. They value in home property investment as really important, and then values in saving the planet. Millennials are kind of the other way around. They're a bit more live the moment. And that's an important distinction. They work hard, but they work on their terms. And their argument is, we're worth it, but you're going to compromise and fit in with the way that we work. But if you are results-focused, as opposed to micromanaging, it's going to be okay. Now, that is the theory. I know a lot of us, I've had some good conversations with Desiree and Dominique about this, about the idea of the office and the idea of people that don't want to work in the office and that kind of thing. And these sorts of things, these kinds of conversations are going to become interesting as we get older, because the office return on investment of running an office and whether we need the costs or not, in the sense that it used to be a place where it's the only place where work could happen. Whereas we now have to look at that kind of thing as, is it the ideal? Are we getting our best return on time and money from a localized place, and how we can look at it differently? So, for example, if you have someone that wants to go and work in a coffee shop, you can say, cool, go 2 hours at that time to that coffee shop, but make sure that the front of your laptop is branded, wearing a Sotheby shirt, and look like you really know what you're doing. Talk on the fake phone calls. Look, got your price, couldn't believe it, but no, great, you know. Got to make use of it. If we start fighting people, we're going to be up for a challenge, because they're highly entrepreneurial as well. Here's an interesting slide of the differences. Something interesting about one that isn't in here, which is really interesting, is how many of you think that instant messaging is the preferred medium of communication for teenagers? How many of you think that that's what they prefer, like WhatsApp? And is that how they want to be communicated with? Okay. Research has shown that 90% want to be spoken to face-to-face. And it's because it's not a novelty for them. Like, they grew up with free Wi-Fi. WhatsApp is a given. I've got a friend of mine, his 5-year-old can type faster than a touch typist. It's ridiculous, because for them it's like writing. When we learned to write, it was a pencil, and then when you turn 10 or whatever, you got upgraded to pen. Now it's like they can watch TV, listen to music, and type on their iPad while they're SMSing someone on their phone all at the same time. It's very hard for us to imagine a world where we're even able to do that, let alone, you know, consider the benefits and how you're able to multitask. The concentration span of these guys is like 8 seconds. It's less than a goldfish, because there's so much coming all the time, and it's just something that is important to realize from a psychographic perspective. And how that relates to marketing is, you cannot expect someone to read a 5-page brochure. Yael and I were talking about it the other day, and the fact that why is it that television is the new movies? You know, Netflix series is a big. Movies, because it's boring. People don't want to wait. They'll watch a series, and even after, like, it doesn't matter. If I've got 5 minutes, I'll pick up this episode. The beginning and the end of the episodes are not really that big a deal. I can just, when I want to watch and get bite-sized things, it's much easier than this long, drawn-out drama, and they die in the end anyway, so it doesn't matter. And, you know, so, okay, let me move on. Otherwise, I'm going to steal Yael's time. Another quick thing here. These guys have relationships. They can have a 2-year relationship online with someone they've never met, ever. And they've got their emotional needs met. I'm not going to even think about how they address their physical needs, but this is their story. This happens. It's reality. And these are the things that we've got to think about when we're talking to these kinds of this market. We've got to work beyond traditional. Authenticity in advertising. The biggest issue that's happened with advertising, and this is a fact, that we can look at the advertising industry. Agencies are closing down. I've got a friend at Ogilvy. They used to have 50 briefs in November, December. They've got 3. Their head designer's designing up their bathroom wallpaper. Offices are closing down. It's a massive issue, because they want authenticity. And if they see it as a lie, and if they see through what you're saying as trying to sell, they don't believe you. Now, again, I'm talking about, remember, this is a specific psychographic. It doesn't necessarily translate to everyone, especially not in this country. A lot of this thinking is obviously very first world stuff, and largely applies less to a lot of our areas, but it's stuff that's important to know about. Video is everything. And again, it's important to understand their values, because you need to, if you're talking to teenagers about investment, about a house, you talk investment. If you're talking about millennials, you say, yeah, but it's a good investment. You might be able to sell it in 5 years and make a profit, because the freedom they value. these sorts of things. So, invention, what do they say? Necessity is. So, here's a guy who's got a situation. There's someone that needs bricks. And he has thought like, okay, so instead of, the guy doesn't have bricks where he is, we need to move bricks, I can't carry them. Who would ever in our environment think of even trying to do this without medical aid? Like, that's going to be a problem. But that is the tool that he's got, and that's what he's going to use. So the thing is, do you develop a tool to address the need, or do you start using a tool in a different way, and then it evolves into something else? This is one of my favorite quotes of all time. And where's Mandy? Mandy, all of this stuff was already in the presentation before so just putting it out there. This for me is incredible because it goes back to looking at what the real need is. A faster horse is not the need. The need is efficiency. The need is saving me time. Got to look beyond the needs, and we have to look this way. Instead of saying, well, first we do this, then we do ads, then we phone, then we do this. Got to start thinking differently about all this. So the industry need is pushing all this stuff. Now, does someone go and find a ball? Does someone make a ball? Does they think, well, this is going to work better? Then do they follow him? And the truth is, I mean, let's take a nice example, an easy example. What is the need when you buy this? What are you actually buying? You're buying a hole. That's actually what you're buying. So, however, there are multiple ways of doing this. I mean, that's a bit of a different approach. But it'll work. And it'll work well. Put a fan on it. Now, most of us wouldn't even think of it, but when you are in an environment where you are forced and you have nothing else, this is where stuff like this starts happening. The thing with technology is that because we develop technology with the tools we've just developed, it's exponential. What used to take 20 years is now taking 3 or 5 years. So when we rested on our laurels in the past and we used a Band-Aid to cover things up, it was fine because when it really started affecting us, we had time to kind of recover. We don't anymore. Because if we don't start adapting now, it will be too late. And we are in a Kodak moment now. And we really need to start thinking about how we're going to tackle the mindset of change. Can anyone tell me what all 6 of these things have in common? In 10 years' time, they won't exist. If you look at some of the 3 fundamental biggest resources or issues that we have, telecoms, energy, communication. Communication is going to be free globally. You will not pay for anything. Cell phone companies, as we know them, will be gone. Television is already on the way out. I'll explain to you why shopping centers won't exist anymore. Fridges, gone. Do you remember how in the 80s you used to, in the morning, you'd go and you'd put your little coupons out and the little milk truck would come and stuff you wanted, right? So now there'll be an app, either in your car, literally in your steering wheel, which reads your body's needs, and you can modify it, and a drone will deliver your food as you need it, when you need it, in your driveway within 5 minutes. Fresh. Fridges are gone. We all know about petrol, that's an easy one. Gas is gone. Mail, gone. Drones. This is a fascinating thing. No longer are we going to Gateway and going to, look at H&M and pick up clothes we want. You'll send in pictures of styles that you want, measure your body, and they will custom make up the clothes that you want, in the fabric that you want, exactly right for you, for your body, and deliver it to your door with a drone in a week. Like, this is heavy stuff. Do we like this little igloo? I'm not in the construction business, and everyone in this room has a better idea of the value of this, much better than I do. But what's interesting about this is, what did this cost to make? The moment, $10,000. That's going to radically drop in price. But what's really interesting is, how long did it take to build? "3D printing is changing this world in ways that are very, very hard to imagine. The idea of having separate designers, someone designing a house, someone designing a kettle, someone designing a logo, are now starting to become blurred, because everyone can literally have a manufacturing process and unregulated release whatever design you want. In that series, The Good Wife, that I saw the other day, there's an example of, there's a guy who developed a design for 3D printing of a gun. And then someone else downloaded the design, for free of course, went and had it printed, and the material that they want, went to a shooting range and it killed someone. Now, who gets sued? The designer, who is not a qualified designer, but you know that. It was your risk for downloading his design. The 3D printer, the guy who bought the whole thing and went through it. It's a difficult one. So these are the kinds of things, the kind of disruption that we're dealing with. And this is the stuff that is now being 3D printed. And how does this affect real estate? These are going to be the two biggest real estate companies in the world in a short period of time. Because the house will find you. It'll know everything about you. It'll know everything about you. And it'll say, you're looking for a house in this area, these are your 3 best options. This one's going to be available in a few months, probably, da-da-da-da-da. There you go. Finding the house and all the other stuff around it, forget about it. Gone. Data, gone. You will be able to drive past a house, take a picture of it with your phone, and it'll immediately spit out all the data. All the past history that used to be, in the past, part of your core business will be free to anyone driving past. You can then contact the person straight away. You can contact the owner directly. You can contact the agent. You can contact whatever you want. These apps already exist. I've got an app on my phone called CamFind. And the other day I was at an event and I saw this weird little creature. It looked like a massive ant. And I followed it around and I took a picture with my phone, and sure enough, in about 30 seconds, it tells me that it's a bullet ant and gives me all the details of the bullet ant and a whole lot of other pictures of it. And that is crazy. This is happening. I don't know how many hands up have heard about Matterport? Okay. Matterport 3D tech, and as far as I understand, the private property guys will know more about how this is being implemented into the portals than I do, but I believe it is. And this is not for us. The point that I'm making is the tech is out there. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. We have to look at what tech is happening and how we can use it to innovate, make our lives easier, more affordable, more efficient, and focus on what our core business really is. Because that's the reality. And when I say 80%, I'm not saying value. There's a massively clear distinction here. I'm not saying value. I'm saying 80% of your time in terms of running around show houses, admin, paperwork. It's going to become, this is what's threatening the industry, because if people rely completely on the old model without even being aware of what's coming, we're going to have a hard time adapting. And this, for me, is really interesting. The world is so different from the world in which your role was designed. Think about that. If your job never existed, and we're starting now, clean slate, and we go, I say to David, you know what, I've had this idea. People buy and sell property. Is there a way that we can get involved in that process? Is there even a position? How do you approach it that way? So we forget everything we've learned, and we say, right, where is there a real need? And not only where is there a need, how are we future-proofing that need when technology is doing this?
Crows have become highly skilled at making a living in these new urban environments. In this Japanese city, they have devised a way of eating a food that normally they can't manage. Dropping a nut from a great height onto a hard road does sometimes crack it, but some nuts are particularly tough. So the crows have devised a better way. Drop it among the traffic. The problem now is collecting the bits without getting run over. So some birds have refined their technique. They station themselves beside pedestrian crossings. Wait for the lights to stop the traffic. Then collect your cracked nut in safety.
So the crow doesn't sit there and think, oh dear, Lead Holmes is coming and fixed commission and 1%. He just thinks he just does it. There's a new environment and I'm going to evolve and adapt. Doesn't get worried about it, doesn't get concerned, just does it. And the reason is because otherwise he's dead. So let's look at where things get interesting. This is complete truth. People think computers are clever. They're really, really not. All they can do is interpret data. So it's the stuff where there isn't actually quantifiable yes or no data that becomes interesting. The current model, if we look at this, is there's the small percentage of, you guys again will know much more about how it's affecting your markets. But there's the DIY model, buyer meets seller, and they leave everyone out of it, and maybe it's your neighbor, whatever, they reach an agreement, off they go. There's this middle emerging thing where all the rats and mice are doing it with their fixed commission and no service, and saying we don't need service, and saying and trying to undermine the value of the service. And then we have us. And obviously, the percentage of your commission is in direct proportion to the level that they trust you and that they need the trust. If I don't need your trust, if I don't need someone that I trust, why on earth would I need you? So talking about that innovation, what comes first? You know that Steve Jobs never ever did market research. When he first launched the iPad, people said to him, but are you crazy? How do you know this thing is going to work? And he just carries on and he does it because he just had a gift of knowing. Because he looked at the customer experience. And you focus on what the customer is looking for, what they're currently experiencing, and interpreting why they are making those choices based on their values and their needs. So let's look at this thing of we're in the service industry. Everyone knows this. We don't sell houses, right? We're in the service industry. So if we look at product innovation versus service innovation, this is really interesting. Because how can you really innovate service? The only way you innovate service is from a product implication, from product innovation. But let's take this as an example. Take someone from 50 years ago, put them in a hospital now. Okay, innovation will mean higher survival rate from an operation, probably potentially less pain, early detection, these kinds of things. But you're still lying in a hospital bed for a week. How has that experience changed? Yeah, your bed might go up and down, and TVs are just as crap, the food's just as crap. How has your experience actually changed? Okay? So, in the US, nursing is projected to grow 16% in 2 years. It's faster than the average of every other industry. There's nothing that an app or a computer will ever be able to do when it starts involving emotion and discernment, compassion, caring, understanding. How does that make you feel? I mean, I'm not a parent. I have no kids as far as I know. And that, it doesn't bother me. I look at that and I think that baby's got a great survival chance. Because that robot is probably infinitely better at keeping that thing alive than a human. But the psychological damage that's potentially going to happen, very expensive. The psychiatrist industry will just do this, right? Psychology industry. That's a bit of a thing, huh? How many of you have seen The Good Doctor? Great show. Anyway, watch it. It's a good example.
About 90 grand a year now. Unemployment is what, $250 a week? Is that one of your positive effects? Well, we'll get to be cozier because I'm not going to be able to pay my mortgage on my house, so maybe we can move into a nice one-bedroom apartment somewhere. And I guess without benefits, I'll be able to hold my daughter as she, suffers from her asthma that I won't be able to afford the medication for.
Well, tests have shown that children under moderate trauma have a tendency to apply themselves academically as a method of coping.
Go yourself. That's what my kids will think.
Your children's admiration is important to you?
Yeah, it was.
Well, I doubt they ever admired you, Bob.
Hey, aren't you supposed to be consoling me?
I'm not a shrink, Bob. I'm a wake-up call. You know why kids love athletes?
I don't know, because they screw lingerie models.
No, that's why we love athletes. Kids love athletes because they follow their dreams.
Well, I can't dunk.
No, but you can cook.
What are you talking about?
Your resume says that you minored in French culinary arts. Most students, they're working the fryer at KFC, but you bust tables at Il Picatore to support yourself. And then you get out of college, and you come and you work here. How much did they first pay you to give up on your dreams?
27 grand a year.
And when were you going to stop and come back and do what makes you happy?
Good question.
I see guys who work at the same company for their entire lives, guys exactly like you. They clock in, they clock out, and they never have a moment of happiness. You have an opportunity here, Bob. This is a rebirth. Now, if not for you, do it for your children.
How on earth is a computer ever going to do that? For those of you that have seen that film, there's another scene later on where she's got this app like a Skype situation, and she tries to fire them through Skype, completely blocking off the being in the room, the touch. The other issue, of course, with digital, I mean, I arrived here on Wednesday, chatted to some of the officers, been working on this, and only to, I guess, remember that Durban hasn't heard of good or free Wi-Fi. There is no such thing in the jungle. They don't know about it. And it was incredibly frustrating because I had presentations to download from David. I had videos to get ready. And I'm sitting in this, not this hotel. I was at a different hotel, at least in the first world here. But I was a different hotel going out of my mind, driving around up to Kloof to try and find places where I could actually just do some work. So again, batteries die. So Waze is fantastic. So you've got everything in, you've got your directions plugged in, your battery dies, you don't know where you're going, you can't even phone the person to get directions, you didn't write them down. Where are you going to charge it? Yeah, in your car, that's great. If you remembered your cable, who remembers the cable? So these guys, I mean, when I saw this ad, when your agent's car is an SLK, I mean, it's interesting what they're doing, and I get it, and it won't last. But we can see why it's working at a very low level. But what's interesting about that SLK thing is the reason this thing exists is because there's 1% of the industry, the history of the industry of estate agents, that has a bit of the stigma. The estate agent that's like the used car salesman that'll do whatever, won't have your best interest and try and sell you. It's that tiny small percentage that ruin it for the rest of us. Now, why isn't the perception more like this? If I had to randomly ask people, what is this man's profession? What do you think the answers would be? Yeah, lawyer. Maybe a financial investor, broker. But not many people are going to say estate agent. Already, property broker is a little better. But then, still because of the stigma, people go, the estate agent with a fancy name. Why not? Imagine your lawyer who's getting you off, whatever, who's fighting your cause, arrives in an old Datsun. Yeah, I know. So why aren't we like that? Because this guy has no problem fighting for his commission. He doesn't fight for his commission. It's not even talked about. It's like, that's what it is. That's a given. All right? In the US, this already happens. The buyer has a broker. The seller has a broker. They're the trusted advisor, this one middleman go-between. And we can see where the value is missing here in terms of the perception. So this thing of being a trusted advisor is really where we're going. If someone just comes and knocks on your door and puts a flyer under your door, or just this, you're already on the back foot because it's all about what do you want from me. If you put something, it again goes back to the presentation that we did about the push strategy. Push, push, push. If you're already on the back foot, because as soon as I see any corporate logo of anything, I know that the only reason you're doing this ultimately is to take money from me. The only time I'm ever going to be okay with it if it's handwritten from a neighbor, which will normally be a complaint anyway, but at least I'll read it. How many of you, hands up, how many of you in this room have been to your clients' kids' birthday parties that weren't friends outside, that you met them as a client? Hands up. Or weddings. Now, 10 to 1, you're the top agents in this room. Why aren't we doing this? Why aren't we building relationships? Why aren't we demonstrating authentic caring? And I say, why aren't we? Of course, many of us are. But I'm just talking just generally. If all of us were doing this, if this was really happening, we'd clean up. You would never have to canvass. You know, it's the stories. You've got to own your neighborhood. This thing of that used car salesman. Think about in this country where used car salesmen really work, where they're really successful. And it's your outlying areas. It's your small communities. Why? Because it's your cousin's husband. And you've had a pride with him. And this is, you know everyone in the town, and he's the one that sells cars. So the trust is a given because you babysit. And you know, so why aren't we looking at big cities as small communities? Forget being an area expert. You've got to be a community expert. We're not selling houses to houses. We're selling lifestyle to people. So in your environment, do you know the owners? If you're in a high street environment, or if you're in near retail, do you know all the owners? Do you spend time in that coffee shop? Do you know all the regulars? If anyone goes to that coffee shop owner or a friend and there's a conversation about selling homes, is everyone that's usually there going to be, oh, well, Lou sells homes, why don't you go and chat to him? I mean, he's at Sotheby's, they're great, they're across the road, and their coffee's really good too. Just think about this. You need to be the mayor of your town, of your community.
Oh, all right, now, you beat me fair and square, so, all right, let me buy you a beer. There. Excuse me, I was sitting there.
Oh, there was no one here when we came in.
No, I mean yesterday. And really, since the Ford administration.
We're just waiting for our table up at Melville's.
So you'll move?
Look, there's lots of other stools.
Look, sounds good. I'm Norm.
You remember Cheers? For those of you that don't remember Cheers or haven't seen it, look it up. I pulled these just because it's my area, and I live in Northcliffe, and there's pages often for every area. I know there's an I Love Craighall, there's an I Love Parkhurst, there's I Love Forwards. I spent 5 minutes on it last night, and you see, apart from the fact that there are people looking for properties here, what's more interesting is there's like ratepayers association and you know, it's the security things that happen, and what's happening with that illegal dumping that's going on, and what's happening with this power station. There's neighborhood issues that you should be right there, not ever selling, but just being a trusted opinion. Okay? This is the kind of stuff that we can do right now that is going to deliver huge returns for free. So in closing, I did go 2 minutes over. Technology, don't let it worry you, it's going to make our lives easier. We do need to know how to use it. You need to filter what's relevant and what isn't, and we need to learn how it can make our lives easier, streamlined, more efficient, be more profitable by lowering our costs. The market of today, the young guys, they want things now, instant gratification, tired of waiting, but tech enables us to help them do that. When I take the picture of the house, the agent will be, you know, it could already literally send a notification to the agent. Someone's just looked at the house and they're interested. Meet you at a coffee shop in 5 minutes. Okay? We don't have to, I'm not expecting all of you to go and get your masters in Snapchat. But there are people that really do know, and we need to start thinking about utilizing these people. Apart from the training that we're going to be doing for you next year, which is quite extensive. Reinvent your role as a trusted advisor. Forget the other stuff. Use it. And something else, just quickly about the tech. When I said relying on tech, what if your battery dies and you're with a client and using calculators and apps? If you can't pull out a pencil and do it the old school way, who's going to trust you? And finally, relationships. Pretty much everything, right? The only people we trust is because we built a relationship with them. And that leads me directly into what is even more important, and where Yale's going to take this,